chasing the same championship, and the people closest to the situation are watching to see how that plays out. This documentary is going to walk you through exactly how this started, what LeBron said, and when he said it, what Brown actually did, and what the inside of this situation really looks like right now that the two of them are officially Philadelphia 76ers. Let's start with who these two men are, because context matters here. LeBron James is by every reasonable measure the greatest basketball player to ever live. 4 championships, 4 finals MVP awards, 13 scoring titles worth of production compressed into a career that has spanned more than 2 decades and outlasted every contemporary he came up alongside. He won his first title in Miami in 2012, his second in 2013, brought one home to Cleveland in 2016 in the most improbable comeback in finals history, and added another in Los Angeles in 2020. He is the all-time leading scorer in NBA history. He has played at an elite level into his 40s. The guy is a once-in-a-generation competitor whose relationship with winning borders on obsession. Jalen Brown is a different kind of star, but a star nonetheless. The former first overall pick at Georgia, he built himself into one of the Eastern Conference's most dangerous wings during his years with the Boston Celtics. He won a championship in Boston, earned finals MVP honors along the way, and developed into the kind of two-way threat that front offices spent years trying to identify and build around. He is explosive, physically gifted, defensively elite, and possesses the kind of scoring ability that keeps opposing coaches up at night running schemes on a whiteboard. The idea of putting Brown in the same starting lineup as LeBron James, Joel Embiid, and Tyrese Maxey was the kind of conversation that felt like off-season fantasy until Philadelphia actually made it real. Now, let's talk about how LeBron ended up in Philadelphia in the first place, because that decision did not come from nowhere. It came from a sequence of events that fundamentally restructured LeBron's relationship with the Los Angeles Lakers and forced him to confront a question he had been avoiding since the final buzzer of the 2025-26 season. At the end of that season, he was pretty sure he was done. He acknowledged as much in a press conference, telling reporters he needed to look at himself honestly and decide whether he still loved the game. According to ESPN's Shams Charania, who cited Clutch Sports CEO Rich Paul, LeBron's uncertainty was genuine. He sat with it for weeks. He spent time with people he loved. He went quiet in a way that a man who has spent his entire adult life at the center of the basketball universe almost never does. The backstory to his departure from Los Angeles also mattered. At the 2025 trade deadline, the Lakers had landed Luka Doncic in a blockbuster deal with Dallas, which simultaneously shipped Anthony Davis out of Los Angeles. That move told James everything he needed to know about where the franchise's priorities were headed. When he opted into the final year of his contract after that trade, Rich Paul was direct about his feelings. LeBron wanted to compete for a championship. The Lakers were building for something further down the road. Those two things did not align. So when free agency opened and LeBron informed the Lakers he would not be returning, the entire league went into full recruitment mode. The Cleveland Cavaliers made their pitch. The Miami Heat reached out, leaning on the emotional history. Golden State and Minnesota were mentioned, but the team that closed was Philadelphia. Philadelphia had already made a seismic move early in the summer by acquiring Jalen Brown from Boston. That trade sent shockwaves through the league because it meant the Sixers were not interested in patience or process anymore. They had Embiid, who despite battling injuries across recent seasons remained one of the most dominant offensive forces in the game. They had Tyrese Maxey, a 2-time All-Star whose development had been one of the most compelling stories in basketball over the past several seasons. Adding Brown made them legitimate. Adding LeBron made them terrifying. According to ESPN's reporting on the recruitment process, Embiid, Brown, and Maxey had all been in direct communication with LeBron during his free agency. Maxey led the charge, but the entire group made it clear that Philadelphia was serious, that the roster was real, and that the window was open right now. On July 24th, 2026, LeBron announced his decision publicly. He called it his last decision. He said he was not going for money. The 2-year, $8 million deal represented a massive pay cut from the nearly $53 million he had earned with the Lakers the previous season. He was not going for family. He was going for a ring. He said he believed he could help make the Philadelphia 76ers a championship team. And with that, the 4-time champion became the latest addition to what instantly became one of the most talented starting lineups assembled in modern NBA history. But the moment the announcement dropped, a piece of unfinished business resurfaced. A moment from 2 summers ago that LeBron had already made clear he never forgot. And that is where the real story inside this story begins. The summer of 2024, Las Vegas, NBA Summer League. Bronny James, LeBron's oldest son, is making his professional debut, navigating the early days of what promises to be one of the most scrutinized careers in league history. Cameras are everywhere. Every possession Bronny plays is dissected and debated by analysts, columnists, and commentators from every corner of the sports media world. It is a lot for any 20-year-old, but especially for one playing in his father's shadow at every single moment. Jalen Brown was there that day, sitting courtside alongside WNBA stars Kaisre Gondrezick and Angel Reese. He was there watching, and lip readers caught what he said. The cameras picked it up. He told the women beside him that he did not think Bronny was a pro. He went further, suggesting that Bronny was on the Los Angeles Lakers at that point, primarily because of his last name. The footage became one of the most discussed moments of the entire Summer League period, because this was not some anonymous analyst making a harsh assessment in a column. This was one of the best players in the Eastern Conference, sitting courtside delivering a blunt verdict about a kid who was already being scrutinized from every angle imaginable. The basketball community had opinions about Bronny before that moment. Afterward, the conversation shifted, and almost everyone who caught wind of it understood that the person those words were most likely to reach was the one person in the world they were most likely to hurt. LeBron James has never been subtle about his protectiveness when it comes to his children. The way he handled commentary about Bronny throughout his son's early career made it clear that criticism of his kids was a different category of conversation than criticism of himself. He brushed off plenty of shots aimed in his direction over the years. Shots aimed at his family landed differently, so when Brown's Summer League comments eventually found their way back to LeBron, and nobody seriously believed they would not, the question became how the king would respond. Brown attempted to address the situation not long after. He issued a public statement framing the moment in more generous terms. He called it a flex for a father to share an NBA court with his son. He acknowledged LeBron's longevity and the accomplishment of what the James family had done. He said Bronny had all the tools he needed to succeed, and that he looked forward to watching his development. The clarification was measured, professional, and clearly designed to reduce the temperature around a moment he likely wished had never been captured on camera in the first place. But a damaging moment and a measured clarification are not equal forces in how they move through sports media. The original footage carries far more weight than the follow-up statement. Commentators who cover the initial blow rarely give equal time to what comes after. And so the tension around LeBron and Jalen Brown quietly simmered in the background for the next 2 years, surfacing periodically in radio segments, podcasts, and press conference questions, then going quiet again, then resurfacing whenever the two names appeared in the same sentence. The moment they came back in the most direct way possible was February of 2026. The Los Angeles Lakers and the Boston Celtics had just played, and reporters caught up with LeBron in the aftermath. Someone asked him about his relationship with Jalen Brown. He could have deflected. He could have given a diplomat's answer. He chose to be direct. He said their relationship had been pretty respectful. Besides what Brown said about Bronny at Summer League, but other than that, they had been alright. He added that Brown had addressed it on social media, said it was all good, then acknowledged almost as an aside that Bronny still had a long way to go in his development. His tone was relaxed. He was even joking a little as he said it, reporters observed. But the underlying message was unmistakable. He remembered. He was not pretending it had not happened. Those comments became the foundation for everything that followed when LeBron's free agency began. Because the moment Philadelphia emerged as a genuine landing spot and Jalen Brown's name was attached to the conversation, people started asking what it would mean for the two of them to share a locker room given the history. Here's where the narrative started collapsing under the weight of what was actually happening behind the scenes. Because while the internet was busy building a feud, Jalen Brown was busy trying to recruit LeBron James to Philadelphia. Reports confirmed that Brown was part of the communication effort during LeBron's free agency, along with Embiid and Maxey. He was not sitting in a corner hoping LeBron would choose somewhere else. He was part of the group making the pitch that the Sixers were the right destination. According to reports, Brown publicly urged LeBron to choose Philadelphia during the free agency period through multiple channels. That is not the behavior of someone who was uncomfortable with the idea of sharing a roster with LeBron James. That is a man who wants to win and recognizes that adding a four-time champion to his team gives him the best chance to do exactly that. When LeBron announced his decision Friday morning, Brown's reaction arrived within 15 minutes. the same phrase he had used publicly when the trade from Boston first sent him to Philadelphia. The same energy he brought when he first called this city home. Now he was putting it out there again, this time to welcome the most famous player alive to the building. There was no ambiguity in that message. There was no reluctance. There was a man who wanted LeBron James in Philadelphia, celebrating the moment LeBron James said yes. The question of why Brown's presence actually helped close LeBron on the decision is worth examining closely, because it is the part of this story that directly dismantles the feud narrative at its core. NBA insiders have reported that Philadelphia's roster was a significant factor in LeBron's deliberations. He was not simply choosing a city or chasing a paycheck. He was evaluating genuine championship viability, and when he looked at what the 76ers had assembled, he saw something compelling. He saw Brown, a former Finals MVP who could guard the other team's best wing every night and score from anywhere on the floor. He saw Embiid, who despite his injury history remains one of the 2 or 3 most skilled big men on the planet. He saw Maxey, whose development into a legitimate star meant Philadelphia had 3 capable offensive engines before LeBron even factored in. The team that Brown helped make attractive was the team that convinced LeBron to sign for $8 million when he could have been chasing far more money elsewhere. That is not a story about 2 stars who cannot stand each other. That is a story about 2 competitive professionals who are operating with a shared objective and understand that winning matters more than past discomfort. On the court, the fit is genuinely exciting. LeBron at 41 is no longer the player who was winning scoring titles in his mid-20s, but he is still a world-class playmaker, still capable of defending at a high level on his best nights, and still one of the most intelligent basketball minds on any floor he steps onto. He sees the game differently than most players ever will. His ability to operate as a point forward, initiating offense, reading defenses before they set, and delivering passes to cutters at angles most players do not perceive, means that he does not need the ball at peak frequency to remain dominant. He can take over a game in a quarter, facilitate for 30 minutes, and still end up as the most important player on the floor at crunch time. That is what makes him uniquely valuable on a roster this deep. Philadelphia does not need LeBron to carry every possession. They need him to make the right read at the right moment, to apply pressure in the fourth quarter, to impose his will when the game tightens, and every other option has been taken away. Those are things LeBron James has been doing his entire career. They do not require the same athleticism he had at 25. They require the kind of basketball intelligence that only comes from 20 plus years of competing at the highest level on the biggest stages in the sport. Brown beside him provides exactly the kind of two-way versatility that championship teams are built around. Brown can guard the other team's most dangerous wing, take the ball off the bounce in isolation, attack closeouts from the perimeter, and function as an intelligent cutter and mover when the ball is in someone else's hands. He has spent years in Boston playing within structures that demanded efficiency over volume, and that discipline translates well to a team that will not need him to manufacture scoring out of nothing. He will get clean looks. The question is whether he can deliver them consistently on the playoff stage where everything is harder, every scheme is tighter, and every mistake gets magnified. Maxey gives the lineup a third creator and one of the most relentless downhill forces in the league. He is the kind of player who makes defenses decide between protecting the paint and respecting the three-point line, and he has never been given a satisfying answer to that choice. VJ Edgecombe, the young guard rounding out the projected starting 5, gives Philadelphia athleticism and defensive energy at a position where those qualities can change a game's entire rhythm. And Embiid, when healthy, gives his team an offensive weapon at the 5 that almost no roster in the NBA can adequately answer. His combination of footwork, post skill, mid-range precision, and three-point range makes him effectively unguardable in traditional one-on-one coverage. Pair that with LeBron operating as the primary passer and Brown as the perimeter threat on the opposite wing, and the defensive math simply does not work in the opponent's favor. The leadership structure will be the most watched dynamic in Philadelphia's training camp. LeBron has led every locker room he has entered since Miami. Brown is not the type of star who defers easily. He is vocal, confident, and has established himself as a primary voice in every organization he has been part of. His decision to leave Boston after years as the franchise's longest tenured player was partly about wanting to compete for a championship immediately. He arrived in Philadelphia with expectations, not patience. Figuring out how 2 stars with that level of competitive ownership coexist will be a story that plays out across the entire season. But it is worth noting that LeBron has spent his career alongside strong personalities before, He played with Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh in Miami. He played with Kyrie Irving in Cleveland. He made those partnerships work because winning was always the priority over individual comfort or ego. The expectation is that this will be no different. And the fact that Brown spent weeks actively recruiting LeBron to Philadelphia suggests that he arrived in this situation already committed to making it work. Across the league, the reactions to Philadelphia's roster were a mixture of awe and honest skepticism. Players who had competed against LeBron for years acknowledged publicly that the Sixers had assembled something dangerous. Tyrese Maxey could barely contain his reaction, referencing his college coach John Calipari in his public comments. An appropriate comparison for a player who had just successfully recruited one of the greatest of all time to join his roster. Eagles running back Saquon Barkley welcomed LeBron to the city publicly. Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro declared July 24th LeBron James Day in the state of Pennsylvania. The kind of civic enthusiasm that tells you exactly how starved Philadelphia has been for this kind of moment. Analysts pointed to the starting five's combined all-star selections and MVP awards as evidence that no team in the Eastern Conference will be eager to see Philadelphia in a playoff series. Sports media spent the day of the announcement running through every possible championship scenario, projecting lineup combinations, debating Embiid's health, and asking whether a 41-year-old LeBron James could realistically carry a playoff load across a full postseason run. Podcast hosts broke down the cap implications and the roster supporting depth. Columnists across the country weighed in on whether this was the kind of assembled talent that translates directly to a championship or simply raises expectations high enough to make falling short hurt even more. The honest answer is that nobody knows. But the honest question is whether any team in the East has the pieces to stop them. If Embiid stays healthy and LeBron is playing with purpose, New York Knicks, who swept Philadelphia last season on their way to the championship, will be the standard Philadelphia measures itself against all year. And every other contender in the conference will spend the summer rethinking their own rosters after watching the Sixers assemble what might be the most star-studded lineup in the league. That Embiid caveat is real and cannot be dismissed. He has appeared in fewer than 40 games in each of the past 3 seasons. The Sixers were swept out of the second round last season by the eventual champion New York Knicks. Philadelphia has not been past the second round in 25 years. They have not won a championship in 43 years. The weight of that history does not disappear because of one extraordinary offseason. If anything, it adds pressure. Every Sixers fan who has lived through seasons of promise and playoff disappointment will be watching every Embiid injury report and every Brown and LeBron interaction with a level of attention that borders on anxiety. The pressure on this roster is enormous. Brown is carrying the weight of arriving as the first major acquisition and being asked to prove that the trade from Boston made Philadelphia better rather than simply different. He left behind a championship culture in Boston, a city where he has spent his entire career, to take a bet on himself and on the Sixers roster that promised more. That bet just got a lot more interesting with LeBron James on the other end of it. Maxey is expected to continue developing while adjusting to playing alongside 2 stars who will demand the ball in their moments. And LeBron is walking into the final chapter of his career under the brightest possible spotlight in a city that does not do quiet. Playing for an organization whose fans have been waiting 4 decades for the feeling of a championship parade down Broad Street. He called this his last decision. Philadelphia is going to hold him to every word of what he promised when he made it. Every interaction between LeBron James and Jalen Brown will be analyzed for signs of tension. Every on-court moment where one defers to the other will be dissected. Every locker room quote will be paused for subtext. Every quiet stretch, every sideline exchange, every post-game comment will be filtered through the history these two carry into that building together. Philadelphia is a city that pays attention. They have been waiting too long and hurt too many times to look away from anything that might explain why it went wrong again. That is simply the nature of the story they have now inherited together. The Bronny comments are not going to disappear from the conversation. They will likely be referenced every time something goes wrong, every time there is a quiet stretch, every time a reporter decides to look for friction on a team that is expected to be perfect. So let's return to where we started. The headline that spread the moment this signing was announced: LeBron wants Jalen Brown off the Sixers. It is a compelling framing. It has the architecture of a great story. History, conflict, 2 competing egos, unresolved tension. The problem is that the evidence for it is thin and the evidence against it is overwhelming. LeBron did not go to Philadelphia despite Jalen Brown being there. By multiple accounts, Brown's presence on that roster was one of the factors that made Philadelphia the right answer. Brown did not quietly accept the signing and move on. He celebrated it publicly within minutes and had been actively involved in recruiting LeBron for weeks. The two men have a real piece of history between them, rooted in a moment that was never meant to be public, and that Brown attempted to address not long after it happened. What this story is actually about is how a moment captured without permission, stripped of its context, and elevated into the foundational text of a feud can take on a life of its own, even after both sides appear ready to move past it. Old footage does not expire. Isolated quotes do not come with timestamps that acknowledge everything that happened between then and now. A moment from a Summer League sideline in 2024 became a lens through which commentators interpreted a free agency signing